I'm here representing Recorded Future, and I'm an engineer. I'm not a security professional, per se, despite working for a threat intelligence company. So I'm here to tell you the story of how threat actors' behavior became an engineering problem, and how that impacts day-to-day engineering in building applications and systems that should serve us as defenders to protect our enterprises, us as individuals, households, and anything, you can name it. So, let's start with a very short introduction about how the world has changed in the past, let's say, 3 to 5 years. Starting from pandemic, that was, we can all admit, very interesting event, when we all suddenly got locked in a house, and bad guys and good guys suddenly had a lot of time to do things, and digitalization really took on the speed, and everything started to shift to internet even faster than it was before, to war zones and conflicts we deal with all over the globe, like conflict that there is between Russia and Ukraine, in the Middle East, China and Taiwan. All that really significantly impacted global landscape, socio-political landscape, but also digital landscapes. That all caused that number and nature of digital and kinetic threats really multiplied. It's just exponentially growing. Internet started to really balkanize. Think about internet being this global structure that brought world together, and the entire idea of building internet was really there. Suddenly you have China doing something really individually, Russia building their own internet infrastructure, limited access, then having the Western world. And then you also have so many layers suddenly to internet. At the beginning, it was all open web. Who remembers here like how it all started when you had those really plain HTML pages, just the plain text, no images, and so on, so on. Now, it's not only balkanized with many, many layers, from open source deep web to dark web, but it also has so many data on it, from text to images, to videos. Think about even this change that happened recently. At the beginning, it was just text. Then, with a pop-up of social media, images started to take over. Now, with really those conflicts that are happening all over the world, the short videos took over completely that digital space, right? And then we have to deal with this velocity of data and variety of data on all those layers, with all those infrastructures. And what that really causes is that we have to deal now as professionals, and differently for cybersecurity experts, differently for engineering, even if we come together in so many spaces. But we need to deal with the really free-folded dimensions of the current world we live in. So we know the kinetic world, when everything happens, when things are tangible, like, hey, there was an explosion, there was an attack, there was a protest, different events happening all over the world. Now those events in translated digital space are happening as well in this digital universe, when you have cyber attacks, when you have all the influence operations and disinformation campaigns, and then you have, and that all create this three-dimensional space we have to deal with. We have the kinetic physical space, we have the cyberspace we have to remember about, and we have this influence operations. And why I treat it as this separate dimension is for a very simple reason, is because they mess up our minds. Suddenly our brains, our minds become its own dimension when someone tries to influence how do we think, what do we do, and we have to also be able to answer that. So in all those spaces, we have bad guys and the good guys. And the story I'm here to tell you today is really about how offenders behave, how they build their systems, what they really do, and what are defensive mechanisms that can serve really to protect it. And I bet you can name all of them, so I will tell you once again that from engineering perspective, and I will focus on how AI impact that entire space. So being the engineer and the builder, how I like to call it, and dealing with the AI systems on every day, I can tell you that it has such a significant and prominent impact that it becomes a problem on its own. So let's establish, going into this presentation, that influence operations, kinetic and digital threats are combined challenge in today's world. We must continuously adapt to this multi-threat environment. I will give you a great example, actually, from our work and what we do. At the beginning, when Russia invaded Ukraine, there were multiplied attacks on the different critical infrastructure entities. So, for example, attacks on the train station, on the power plants, on hospitals. And those attacks, so this is the kinetic space I'm talking about, that attack happened when someone literally throw a bomb or missiles, or there are soldiers coming and attack. And there was an attack on a power plant. And what was really difficult about that simultaneously what happened, there was a physical attack when the power plant was being bombarded, alongside cyber attacks on that critical infrastructure, but also on all the responders around, so they couldn't react on time. And the response time was significantly prolonged for that specific reason, alongside with social media being full of those fake accounts, spreading information that really nothing is happening, it's all calm, and you know, all sun is shining, and there is no attack. So think about the difficulty and complexity of the world we build in. And us as engineers, as defenders, we really try to build systems that can react to all that multi-threat environment simultaneously. So there is this new world order we have to deal with, and it's a difficult one. But what happened also recently, there is completely new technology order. So I bet almost everyone in this room had already played with ChatGPT or directly with any large language models or any other multimodal applications. But the technology was so significantly behind our human capacities, right? And now we are finally in the space, I believe it, that's my personal belief, that we are finally hitting the space when technology really starts to be paired with the human capacity, or maybe even exceeding it, and on very different ways. Of course, machine can't take a decision and doesn't have the cognitive skills that each one of us here in the room has, right? We know how, when we talk to each other, we have this different cognitive capacity to understand the environment and model the environment we are in. When, on the other hand, we can't handle the quantity and volume of data and computational power that machine will have, and how they will, and the speed where they deal with it. So that's what really happens. It was really emphasized with the rise of the large language models, which was really, I think it's now 1.5 years to 2 years, when we had the rise of GPT-3 and then ChatGPT. Now we are at GPT 4.0. What is very interesting, and all of you have heard that story, I bet many of you are completely fed up with listening about large language models and LLMs. I get it. But what is very, 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 very interesting, that simultaneously as those large language models were on a race and they were taking over really this technology space, and it was simultaneously happening as well on a dark web. So it's actually, and I will try to present you how easy it is to use large language model for malicious purposes. And so we were observing with excitement, right, that there is this GPT series, and there is this Llama and Claude, and now we have Grok, who is quite sarcastic model, and all those models that you can probably name. I stopped to count them. I had a nice slide showing all those models over time. Now it's like, the slide is so busy, it doesn't make sense to show it anymore. But what was happening on the dark web, the bad guys were sitting and just literally simultaneously acting and doing the same thing for malicious applications. So as we saw those models at rise, we also saw that we had the rise of Worm GPT. That was really the phishing for the business email compromise. Then we had Fraud GPT, Darkbart, Wolf GPT, XXX GPT, Poison GPT, and there is many, many others. What is really interesting, I find it quite ironic actually and interesting, that now all those models, they start to be promoted on the dark web as an all-in suit for cyber criminal solution. good marketing on the TA side. But what is the problem? And why it was so easy for those models to happen on the dark web and be at use on such a scale and so quickly is, first and foremost, we were so vested into technology and developing that we really didn't, that guardrailing and auditability and overall regulatory environment is always like a follow-up to technology. You don't start there. You actually have the technology and then you try to catch up. Threat actors benefited from that fact. Of course, those models were quickly introduced with some type of guardrails, and guardrails are really mechanisms that serve to prevent malicious use of such a model. But guess what? They don't really work. And the cyber criminals are really, well, they're smart people. What can I tell you? They really know and quickly figure out how to overcome them. So here is an example. And they differ between the models. Some models have really strong ones. Some models have not at all. In some applications, to have guardrails, you have to pay for it. That's interesting, right? How ironic. I don't think that TAs are paying for that type of service. But for example, if you go to chat, and just to show you the difference also how easy it is to overcome those guardrails, it's like, you go to ChatGPT and you make that statement here. My colleague actually from our research group did that exercise. Just write me the VBA code that enables macro in Word document. And ChatGPT comes back very politely, like, I'm really, really sorry, but I can't help you here. This is type of application that I will not support. But you go to Playground, which is another way to access GPT model. So GPT model powers up ChatGPT. Playground is another environment when you can have access the same model. You make the same question, you prompt it in the same manner, and it spits out the answer. And I will tell you more about that particular application very shortly that actually allowed us to write malicious code. So we said about this multi-dimensional, multi-threat landscape, but what we also say, what we really have to say here is that in that sense, AI, with large language models, with multi-models, with everything happening right now, amplifies everything. And what does it mean? It amplifies the good guys and us as defenders to try to protect our organizations, enterprises, or really, you guys name it, but it also amplifies all the activities on the offensive side of what is being done. And that happens now across all data types. We have large language models, of course, text. Internet is dominated by text. Now you have applications that allow you to write a code, and allow you to write a good code, and allow you to write a malicious code, or for malicious purposes, I should say. It helps you to do that with images, right? You can so easily create deepfake type of image and destroy someone's life, destroy someone's reputation. You can do that and apply someone's logo in very, very malicious context. And that can go also for destroying reputation of the company. Same with video, right? It's so easy to clone voice and appearance, and I will tell you more about that in the end, video and voice. So when you think about that, what is really happening right now, we have new world order with new technology order that immediately means we have new cybersecurity order as well. When our threat landscape extends to so many new applications and so many new things that I don't know if a few years ago we would think about that voice of an executive becomes a part of our threat landscape. So it's really scary. So I will now give you 3 use cases when us at Recorded Future, so company I work with, I think I forgot to mention, I work for Recorded Future. My colleagues are sitting over there, and they are here to help to answer all the questions. We had this red teaming exercise when engineering team I'm part of, alongside our investigators, researchers, so-called insect team, they are like those super cool dudes that sit on dark web all day long, and they know like literally everything that happens on the internet in a real time. We sat down together, we really closed everyone in a small room, just giving them pizza, and they were like, can you recreate threat actors' behaviors? Like, choose 3-4 use cases you would like to work with, and just can you recreate environments and the process and the systems, can you build it? In, of course, confined, secured environment. So our security director that is here perfectly approved it. So he, just one for disclosure. So first use case we were working with was the disinformation campaigns, so really using deepfakes to impersonate executives. And that was inspired by the story that has, 2 stories that has happened. One in Hong Kong, when there was a completely cloned CFO, visually, voice and body language and so on, called into the Zoom meeting with one of company employees responsible for company finances. And it was so realistic that fake CFO, deepfake CFO, made this employee make a transfer for $26.2 million. So scary, right? It was so realistic. The second thing that happened, now you know, I hope you know that in US is a big election year. So like, there's this race of Trump and Biden, and there is a lot of discussions going on. I'm not here to talk about politics, but I'm here to tell you that people are so strongly polarized that in New Hampshire, what happened, there were fake calls impersonating one of the candidates and their people from the campaign, convincing others why not to vote for that other candidate. And people were so strongly vested that they were, of course, it was not only this information campaign to bias the society, but it was also, if you sponsor a campaign with $10, $15, $50 or whatever the amount, then it will make us stronger. And guess what people were doing? They were transferring money. So inspired by those 2 stories, we were like, okay, can we make a deepfake? And so of course, I can tell you like that. It took us 6 hours to create 3-minute presentation of one of our executives at the company. Of course, the story was really funny because we said that our company will merge with Formula 1. So we didn't have very malicious purpose in that. But the video was so realistic. We generated video, we cloned texts of the presentation. Everything was generated by AI. The one thing that sold this 3-minute video and that it was fake is actually on a screen. Can you see how the future is written? That's the only thing that really sold that it was a deepfake. It was so realistic. So some findings from that. It took us only 6 hours. Guys, that's nothing, right? It is so easy to do it. So the entry barrier for threat actors to do this disinformation campaigns and creating the deepfakes is extremely low. It requires almost no computer science acumen. There are such a great UI interfaces that do the job for you, that it's really, really easy. I actually tested it on my 9-year-old daughter. Maybe, I don't know if it's a good test or not, because she's really smart. But actually, I was like, can you play around with those models? She loved it, and she was so proficient so quickly. It's just that easy. And it's very cheap. So what is really difficult or easy, depends on the person, is access to the content. So if your executive has strong social media presence, or media presence in general, then probably there is a content. And probably this content can be used in a malicious way. If there is no content, then it becomes a bit more problematic. And once again, when you use those models, that's why I started by talking about guardrails, because model doesn't really care that you create a deepfake. So those protection mechanisms are very not efficient here. What is a great protection mechanism that we learned? If you have accent. Because those models are trained on the English materials, American English being more precise. So if you have some type of accent, it's very, very much more difficult to recreate. I tried to clone myself to show you a short video how easy it is. It was ridiculous, so I gave up that idea. As you can hear, I have a strong accent, which is my protection mechanism. But why it becomes a problem, and just to show you that, hey, the TAs actually know it's quite easy to do it, is here the statistics. Countries per region with the biggest increase in the deepfake fraud cases, and think about, those are only registered ones. The one that actually someone reported. And I don't know, but like, come on guys, like 2-3 years ago, not that long time ago, no one would think about those numbers, or they would be like so, in such a low space, right? So this is scary, and that will definitely exponentially increase. So think about that. When you protect your companies, I think my main message here, and why I'm talking about this use case, is just so easy and so cheap to do it, that when you are protecting your organizations, individuals, or whatever you guys protecting as a security expert, voice and appearance and media presence is part of your threat landscape right now that you have to account for. Second use case. Oh wow, it's 20 minutes in. I really have to speed up. Impersonating legitimate websites. So what happened really here is like we cloned DOM trees of the websites, and we fed it with AI-generated, completely biased content. So think about like the Russian-sponsored media. We cloned it, and we fed it with pro-Ukrainian content and images. This is a bit more difficult use case that requires some level of sophistication for threat actors to actually be able to do it. It requires also quite a lot of curation on a human side. Because still the text generated, someone has to proofread it, because there are some hallucinations, there are some things that pop up that have to be corrected in that sense. But think about how it works today. So what actually inspired that use case? Today you have troll farms all over the world, right? So let's say somewhere in the Philippines, the average daily wage is around $10. And you have a lot of humans hired to write this just false content, biased content, and write those articles in English. English very often is not their native language, so then you have to have English speakers to curate it, and then you pay those people to do that. And how many articles a day or a week they can generate? Few, not that much, right? Even if this method is a little bit more sophisticated, it is just so tremendously easy to do that and decrease the entire cost of operation 100-fold. So you go down for the $10 daily wage to potentially 1 cent. And how many more articles a day you can write? Hundreds? You name it. So this business case, even if it has some level of curation and difficulty and sophistication to it, it's a very attractive one for threat actors, because it's very automated in a sense and creates quite lucrative income. The third use case that I want to mention here is self-augmenting malware evading error rules. So what our team did here is they took snippets of malicious code and set of ERR rules that created the detection, submitted it to the large language model, and say, can you rewrite that code so it's not detected by those rules? How simple, right? But great news here is that actually this use case is difficult, requires quite high level of sophistication, and is not that efficient yet. It worked very well, actually, on short snippets of code, but it worked really poorly on the long snippets of code. But on the short snippets of code, it actually created synthetic, I'm losing the word, you see, the correct code and also preserved functionality of the malware. And that was one of the main goals. Can you write the code so it actually preserves the objectives? Yes, so quite expensive, quite high level of sophistication required. This entire report, if someone is curious, is available on our website and talks also about other use cases we have investigated and has also much more details. So yeah, let's spend a few minutes to talk now about this, as we are on this AI-enabled malware and evading Yara rules and really bad behaviors. So what is really self-learning malware? And well, actually, I will turn around the question. You probably know way better than me what is self-learning and AI-enabled malware. But I know how it works from the architectural perspective and what is the mechanism that drives this. And I would like to spend a minute now to talk about that. As an engineer, I find it quite fascinating and very difficult problem, like really leading us in the future. One of the really most interesting cases, just for you guys if you want to check it later, was the Deep Locker by IBM. The researchers have created AI-enabled malware that stayed really dormant in different environments, and unless there was a so-called trigger that activated the malware. And there were two main triggers that they were investigating. One was voice recognition or face recognition. And that's what was really waking up the malware, and because it was like the indicator that you are logging into some type of secure system. Therefore, there is a high probability there will be some type of credentials. Guess what? I want to steal those credentials. And there was used also, they were testing after use of the optical character recognition to extract data because it was taking screenshots and extract the text from those different screenshots for that particular purpose, and many others. But let's talk for a second about architecture of self-learning malware. So there's few phases that on how it works. First phase is this learning component. What malware does in this particular stage, it collects the data about the victim. And it collects it from, if it's already infected environment, from within the environment, but also from all the external available data. It utilizes this material to train models that are embedded in a malware and learn about the victim. From there, what is really happening, now malware knows the victim, so it can really adjust attack methods, attack vectors, attack timing, and so on and so forth. So the entire strategy. From here, we go into this decision-making engine where malware adaptively plans the execution. So based on all that learned techniques, now this is my strategy. This is the time, the moment, the devices, yada, 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 that I will attack. It deploys the attack. From here, we go to the third phase, which is one of the most interesting, once again, in my personal opinion, when malware behaves extremely dynamically. It learns on the fly the environment and modifies its code and tries to mimic the behavior of the entire system that it is in, just to lower the detection. From here, malware is blended with the environment, right? It also dynamically selects C2C servers and spread mechanisms. So how it will spread across the entire environment, but also it adaptively chooses the most valuable data it's interested in stealing and propagate that data back home, if we can say this way. So It chooses right data and the right method to exfoliate it. Now, from here, once again, it dynamically changes its code so it can stay and propagate in those different environments it actually went into, and or stay dormant, or once again, it repeats the entire the entire cycle when it's really mimicking the behavior, learns the behaviors, and deploys further attack. From spreading the exploits, another interesting phase of the self-learning malware is that it does success and failure analysis. So it really goes through the entire process and the code modifications and what has happened in the environment, and it refines its strategy. And of course, the success factors are here the key. So this is called the continuous learning process, and that's being repeated over and over and over. So it's a very interesting space when a lot of things are happening and they're really sophisticated to really build that AI-enabled malware. Those are very sophisticated techniques requiring a really great knowledge, computer science knowledge that are being built. So now what do we do? What can we do as defenders to protect our systems from that, vicious applications? Of course, I think it's quite logical to say at that point, or for me as an engineer, that we need AI to stop AI. So that's why our team at Recorded Future, we build a defending mechanism based on the systems. So Recorded Future has at its core intelligence graph. An intelligence graph is the really digital, we like to say, it's a digital twin of an internet. But what it differentiates it from like just having information, searching for information like you can do in Google, is that we have very strong ontological connections. Our graph understands that this malware belongs to this malware family, was created to these threat actors. It understands the geopolitical landscapes like that, hey, Gothenburg is in Sweden, Sweden is in Europe, and things like that. And we build on that knowledge this type of searches, or searches surfacing really the data. So one of the first defensive mechanisms we started to build, understanding that threat landscape and what is going on, is like how we can help the analysts and security expert to shift cognitive load. We've heard so much about time spent in finding the data, processing the data, figuring out the data. Is there anything that we can go scan entire internet and fetch that information in a very reasonable manner back to the analyst, back to the expert, so they don't waste time on processing the data? We want to shift that cognitive load, because guess what? Still, what we humans do way better than any type of computer system is like we take decisions, we take actions, right? And if we can't protect ourselves real time, then is there really a protection? No, we will be always reactive. We will be always, there is an attack created the harm, we have to deal with it. So how we become more proactive and stay ahead of the bad guys? So one of those things is like building that mechanism. And we build that mechanism for many, over a decade now, so many years, but it was in a query language. Once again, we try to speed up the process, but then you have to learn our query language to be able to do that. With the rise of AI, overnight, what became very simple is that you don't have to be so proficient in our query language to benefit from it. You can use natural language. You go, you ask a question, like you would ask your colleague, and then from there, you fetch the data, and it exactly gives you, also it tells you on the bottom, actually what it was fetching, what it was looking for by getting surfaced that data back to you. What is very interesting about that mechanism that we managed to accomplish really quickly, my pride and joy, by the way, is that we managed to keep the context, so you can have a conversation. It's not a question, answer, and then you switch. You actually can have an in-depth conversation when you say, can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me, and really create a great deep dive around that. Also gives you some, and this is the beauty of large language model. The most simple use case is actually summarize me the data, right? When you apply it and it just splits out the summary. But this is the next one. right? It translates different difficult queries and allows you to, it really decreases the barrier entries for analysts in learning new systems and so on, because you deal with the language you know. And interestingly, it doesn't have to be English. So one of the interesting applications, other defensive applications that as an engineers working for cyber threat intelligence company we work with, and we try to build once again to make sure defenders are fully empowered to face bad guys and face threat actors and really protect the entities and people, other humans, are dealing with images. I was talking about this variety, velocity, and volume of data. So text is one of them, but dealing with images and videos is the second one of them. So now you have those fantastic models like Clip that are trained on a text to image vectors, which basically means the model understands if you type passport, it will go and fetch images of passport. It will know when the passport represents image. Why it's interesting? Because when you think about the identity compromises or credential leaks and so on the dark web, everything, oh, not everything, but so much is being posted as a screenshot. Right? So it's so easy if you can collect that data and actually give me all the passports that were posted on the dark web for my company in the past 3 weeks, or like employees of my company in the past 3 weeks. Public sector even better, right? For all the citizens of Sweden in the past few weeks. Because it also works alongside with OCR, so it optical character recognition, so you not only have a passport, but if there is any mention of a country, it will capture it. Or if there is, any type of emblem or flag, it will also capture it. Another one is image similarity. That's also very interesting for brand applications or these geopolitical applications. When you think about that there is an image posted and there is text associated with it. And text says some things that are completely not true, or text is true, but you're not sure if image really follows. Most simple application, actually that was inspired by what was happening in Middle East when you were having so many news, fake news. When someone was saying there is bombarding of this place with attached image, and then you start to analyze the image and you realize that image is from 10 years ago and not even from Middle East. So once again, it's such a misinformation campaign spread that is very important to analyze. So what helps to solve that problem is so-called image similarity in analysis. When you find, from all the collected images, you find images that are very similar, and what is very interesting, it gives you similarity vector. So similar images can be images like if you have image of a plane, there will be other images having a plane. But another way of thinking about similarity is also when the image is blurred or has different resolution, so maybe it was zoomed out or zoomed in, so it was in some way transformed, or it becomes occluded. You just put something in front and you occlude partially the image. For example, I don't know, in this very easy case, just cover some type of associated street names, so you can't actually indicate the location. So those are some of the defensive mechanisms on images. Another interesting one also for images is like, it's so easy to extract location when you read text. And someone says, hey, in Gothenburg, Sweden, security fest is happening, right? It's, okay, Gothenburg, Sweden, easy peasy. But then image is associated and you want like, is this really Gothenburg? And we would know, right? For example, like on your t-shirt, you can figure out that there is Poseidon and this and that. The guys were describing the concept of the t-shirt to me before that speech. But if you send it to the world, other people won't. But this type of mechanism will absolutely help them out to say, give a probability indicators of where this image could have been taken. And the one that is one of my favorites, at least recently, because it's a difficult problem, is, okay, so we deal with a natural language because of the LLMs, so we deal with it much better in a space of the computer science. Our machines understand natural language, so you don't have to query for things. And can we translate that application into the malware searches? So when we have a sandbox environment, we have so many reports. From my experience, and you may have different, I will be looking forward to hear from you different experiences after the talk, is like many of those, you can find the report, but you can't search easily through the report. It's very much of a visual manual search when you open every single report and you use it. So can there be a mechanism that allows you to extract data from the report and have it searchable with natural language? Just give me this, give me that, as easy as it gets. And I was working with one of our INSIC team members who is like, oh my gosh, he's like a super powered analyst, and he was talking me through his process of how he's analyzing all the dynamic and static reports from our sandbox and how the process looks. And it's such a time-consuming process, and he's so fast. He knows what he's looking for, so he's doing that. But how you teach others to do that? How you propagate that knowledge so you are not this siloed individual? And I give it to all of you, you are super powered, but are you enough for the scale of the problem you deal with? So what we created here is actually the system that allows you to go and search through all the reports from the sandbox in natural language. So here you have an example saying, find all samples that talked HTTP to the netblock, yada, yada, yada. And you can ask any type of questions in natural human language about what you're looking for, and it will return you the answer. It will return you specific reports that you can still open, and then also it can go as far as help you to do some trend analysis across many reports and so on and so forth. So those are the things that us engineers we deal with when we think about cybersecurity experts and what we can build for you guys to really enhance your defensive mechanisms and help you be faster and really benefit on your human capacity of making decisions, knowing the context, and knowing what to do next in the next steps. For that, we are really focused on three things: on reasoning, automation, and autonomy. Right? Reasoning is a hell of a difficult problem, I can tell you. So we start with very simple ones like analyze those trends or do some type of analysis, really, at that point of time. And automation is, for example, the natural language query. Instead of learning query language, instead of going processing the data, reading it yourself, can you make it faster just by getting it returned and to the extent you need? And lastly, autonomy. It's also quite difficult, not as difficult as reasoning, but it's also like, if something happens, you know, so many attacks happen over Christmas. It's such a great time to attack because there is just fewer people looking at the systems, fewer people to react, or Thanksgiving in US, for example. So do we always have to wait for someone to react in a real time? So can there be, and now of course the prominence of agents is coming after large language model. Everybody talks about bots. After bots, we will be talking about agents, and probably many of you already do. Can they act autonomously? So we don't have to wait. So those are the three things that we are really focusing on as an engineering environment. And just to finish very quickly my presentation, as I mentioned at the beginning, new world order, new technology order pushes us to have new security world order. And what that effectively means, that it's severely escalating threat landscape. I'm sure I'm stating facts here for you guys. All of us, we have seen it. But barrier entry for the bad guys are so much lower and so much cheaper right now. And really what it takes, it's a little bit of time and creativity. Then number two things, the importance of fortifying your assets. And it's not only about fortifying assets, and you probably could tell me so much about what that means and how you guys do it. But my message as an engineer here, as an individual, as a professional, is this threat landscape extends. It's not only your systems, it's not only your entities within that system. it's also your executives, it's also your individuals, their voices, their appearances, and the media present all over the internet. So don't forget about that. Then, ethical and regulatory concerns. There is so much debate nowadays about if AI development should be regulated. Bad guys don't regulate how they develop the AI. Of course, we have to regulate how to apply AI. That there is no concerns. But if we don't want to fall behind, we really have to stay ahead of the game in the systems we develop, but we are the defenders, which means we have to do it in a very ethical way and allow full level of transparency. So if I build a system, I want to give you full level of transparency, best level of quality and auditability so you can actually trust that system. Because guess what's the biggest problem with AI right now? It's really hard to trust it. So with that, there is the great power of AI and human collaborating. It's my life mantra, that's why I end up studying computer science. The power of machines and the power of human. The bad guys are benefiting from that. We have to make sure we do as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.